Hello Year 8 and welcome to the secure paragraph video. So in the first video that you will have watched, we were looking at this question: how does Orwell use language to show the violence and the horror in a battle? And what I showed you, we underlined and talked about a few different elements, a few different sentences, phrases, words where he illustrates the violence and the horror of the battle, and the one that I'm going to focus on is this first line. But the most terrifying spectacle of all was Boxer rearing up on his hind legs and striking out with his great iron shod hooves like a stallion. Because Boxer we know was usually very calm, docile, placid character, but he was a fearful sight, stood on his hind legs and kicking out at the men. Now, in Key Stage 3, so for some of your Year 9 assessments, and certainly for your Year 8 assessments, you've been shown a little frame that looks something like this. And what I'm going to be doing today is showing you how to turn this from what really is a good developing paragraph into a strong, secure paragraph. So to give you an idea of how to develop this kind of like basic C's framework into a good, secure paragraph. If you watched the developing video, this is the paragraph that I created based around that one little quotation. So my statement, turning the question into a statement: one way Orwell shows the violence of the battle is when he writes, the most terrifying spectacle of all was Boxer. So statement, and then my quotation for my evidence. What does this quotation imply? Well, it implies that watching Boxer fight was the most alarming and scary sight. Now I need to zoom in on a word, and I'm going to zoom in on a word from my quotation. And I'm going to zoom in on the adjective terrifying, because the adjective terrifying suggests that the sight of him would have struck fear into the farm workers. They would have been scared of him. My explore. So what is Orwell trying to show, and how does this link to the context? Perhaps Orwell is trying to show how angry Boxer was that the men were trying to take away the farm from the animals. Now, as Boxer represents the workers, perhaps it shows that Orwell thinks that people don't want to be ruled over again, and those are the workers in the Russian Revolution. Now that's okay for a developing paragraph. What I want to do is to show you how I would turn that into a secure paragraph, and there are just one or two things that I've improved a little bit. So if I take my improved statement, how I would write a statement for a secure, rather than just turning the question into a statement, I would add a little bit more detail. Which part of the text am I going to be referring to? So one way Orwell shows the violence of the battle is when he depicts the sight of Boxer in battle. So I can get rid of this. I've got my new, slightly more specific statement here that is actually showing me which part of the text I'm looking at. And obviously I need my evidence. I can't use this because this is just a quotation on its own. So I said he writes that Boxer was the most terrifying spectacle of all. So I've just increased the length of my statement a little bit. I've put my evidence in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these entirely, because one of the things that really helps develop your paragraphs is kind of integrating your inference and your statement together. So here's how I've done that. What I've done is I've actually zoomed in straight away, so I'm going to put it somewhere between the inference and the zoom. I've zoomed in on this word, but what I've done is I've shown what that implies with respect to the quotation, and I've also done a thing called embedding the quotation, so integrating the quotation. The quotation becomes a part of my sentence. The fact that Boxer is terrifying implies that watching Boxer fight is the most alarming sight of the battle, and the adjective suggests that the sight of him would strike fear into the farm workers. So really what I've done is I've kind of put together these two, the inference and the zoom from my developing paragraph, I've kind of like condensed and put them together into one sentence, and it's just a little bit more sophisticated way of writing this. Notice that I've still got the adjectives there, so I've still got my terminology, so it's kind of like zooming in on the quotation and suggesting what the quotation implies. So I'm still using the word implies there. The fact that Boxer is terrifying implies that Boxer, watching Boxer fight is the most alarming sight of the battle. So integrating those two together. Now what that means is I'm going to expand a little bit upon that. Okay, I'm not just going to write about Boxer being terrifying. I'm not just going to write about him being the most terrifying spectacle of all. I'm going to link that to some more quotations, and I've integrated some more quotations here, and I'm just going to write a little bit more. It's not just about him being a terrifying spectacle, it's about how he is fighting. Okay, so I said, furthermore, the fact that he is striking out with his great iron-shod hoofs, and notice that both of those are integrated. They're both a part of my sentence. What this does is it shows how dangerous he is, because iron's a very strong metal and can cause some terrible damage. So I've got my statement, I've got my evidence, I've got my inference and zoom together, and then what I've done is I've kind of like extended and used further quotations from that section of the text to expand upon my idea that Boxer fighting and watching Boxer fight, seeing how he rears up, seeing how he punches out, shows how Orwell is using language to show the violence of the battle. Now of course we've got these many quotes, 1, 2, 3 quotations here. What is it that Orwell's trying to show? Well, I think Orwell's trying to show how angry Boxer is, that the men were trying to take the farm away from the animals, and that he is desperate to fight to keep the farm for the rest of the animals. But what we've got to try and do is link this to the idea of the context, so the Russian Revolution and Russian history. So we know that Boxer is representative of the dutiful workers. So perhaps what he's trying to do is show that if, by showing how angry Boxer is, what he's trying to show is that if we can get all of these workers fighting together, if we can get all of these people working together, it shows how strong they are. So kind of individually they're quite weak, but when they are all together they are very, very, very strong. So Boxer symbolizes the strength of the working person, and the fact that they can actually overcome and beat the armies of the royals, so Tsar Nicholas, just shows how strong they are. So this is how we write a a secure paragraph. We got our statement, we got our evidence, we got our inference and zoom kind of together, but then I've continued a little bit more. I've looked at quotations from further on within the passage, and I've just been a little bit more specific about what Orwell's trying to show in terms of what Boxer in terms of what Boxer is trying to do, but also how this links to the context of Russian history. So going back to this sheet, okay, because you're going to have a go at writing a paragraph yourself, you might want to be focusing something. I quite like this list of violent verbs here. There is a really nice list of violent verbs. You know, it's a list, so we've got our terminology there. We can explore the implications of these verbs, as I mentioned in that first paragraph. We could talk about the we could perhaps even link that to the cat who sinks her claws almost vampirically in the farm worker, the cowman's neck. So good luck with that. Let's see how you get on with it, and try your best, because you'll be doing a little bit of this will be marked, and there'll be a little bit of dirt work perhaps leading on from it. So good luck.